I spent an hour sitting in silence, wondering why the Last of Us show finale left me feeling empty. I'm MADkurious, and I commentate on the power of storytelling in video games. I love all communication mediums. In fact, I've spent far more time watching TV than I have playing video games, and I have far more favorite shows than I do games. I've even preferred some TV adaptations over their source materials, such as the wonderful novel Station 11 and its HBO adaptation. I think the show is actually an improvement to the story tenfold. But today, I was disappointed by the TV adaptation of my favorite video game. This criticism is not me gatekeeping the source material. The HBO adaptation of The Last of Us was really well done in numerous ways. As expected, they did some things better and some things worse, and I'll go into more details about the differences between the show and the game and how this show actually paves the way for a lot more TV adaptations of video games in a different video. That was actually the video that I planned to do today, but I knew that the finale might completely upend my plans, and I'm actually not upset about it. In a way, I'm glad it did, because now we can talk about a pervasive issue in modern storytelling. Quick spoiler alert for The Last of Us game and season 1 of the show, and trigger warning for discussion of suicide. The Last of Us HBO adaptation fell into the trap that so many other stories do, and because of that, removed the emotional resonance from what should have been a tear-jerking and potentially life-altering season 1 finale. And I do not say that as an exaggeration. You see, emotional resonance and theme in storytelling can change lives. Theme is something that can be subjective, and that we can seek to define in many ways. We can follow the points laid out, we can guess or listen to what the creators have to say, or we can grasp onto what resonates with us and create that meaning for ourselves. So in this analysis, I will make my point with evidence from each of those categories. In The Last of Us game versus the show, they sacrificed one theme of the game for another in the show, and what they did to the theme is a pervasive issue throughout modern storytelling: excessive reliance on the superficial, the escapism epidemic. Just like in a recent review of a game in my video, Are Walking Simulators video games, the show made their focus being heard and sacrificed their message in order to be heard. What might be their motivation in that? As most of the mistake occurs in the last episode, they generally have the viewers hooked by then. Part of me wonders if in place of the fun that we had in playing the game, they tried to insert fun with escapism aspects in the show, especially in the heavy final episode. So instead of having fun in gameplay and also giving us a real message that holds up a mirror to our delusions and challenges us to think critically about ourselves, they tried to infuse the feeling of fun during serious topics in a way that undermined the essence or theme of the story. In fact, I have a whole video about that theme. Why is everyone obsessed with The Last of Us? Here's a quick recap of what I gleaned as the theme in that video. The reason everyone is obsessed with The Last of Us is because it's a story about the essence of life. Once you've given every end to justify the means, once you've done everything it takes to get a few more seconds with each other, it's about how to live with surviving. It's about the journey in finding what makes life worth living. If you love the game, I promise you will love that video. Also, if you like my sweatshirt, this is my own merch. Link in the description below. Now let's discuss what the new main theme is in the show. Joel is given conflicting values. When this is done right, it can be extremely realistic. We all hold conflicting values that shift and change based on our thoughts, ideas, experiences, and desires. But there's a reason that we tell stories in ways that aren't always 100% realistic. You see, we create meaning in our lives. We can craft the story of our lives, but it's never quite going to be as clean-cut and straightforward as a well-paced plot. The reason for this is to make a point of some sort, and some points can change lives. Joel was ready to end it all due to losing his daughter. This is a deviation from the game source material. The emotional beat that the game used here was for Ellie to give Joel a picture of his daughter that he had rejected when his brother tried to give it to him. It also showed up on his daughter's wall at the very beginning of the game, and this symbolized not only the growing bond between Joel and Ellie, but also Joel's healing throughout their journey. In this new suicidal background for Joel, the dialogue suggests that he tells Ellie in order to communicate how much he values her. But just as with his general nature, he takes this too far. In suggesting that rather than the journey and his emotional growth helped his wounds, that his love for Ellie healed his wounds. He suggests that that relationship with Ellie is now his main purpose and fulfillment. In the behind the scenes, we hear the creators discuss how Joel saved Ellie because he couldn't handle another loss. Yet at the end, in both the game and the show, he says the line,
"You keep finding something to fight for."
Adding in more motivation for Joel deciding to save Ellie left no questions as to why he did what he did in the show, versus in the game where we could make a slightly wider variety of assumptions with a bit more nuance. Could Joel have lived with himself if he hadn't saved Ellie? That's the question that this new motivation for Joel in the show presents. The game would suggest that he could live with himself, but the show tells us both yes and no. And while inner conflict is certainly a real phenomenon, I think it's more than this. I think they dove further into his parental behavior, and he might actually be lying about figuring out something to live for, because he doesn't necessarily believe it. He just wants Ellie to believe it. That's what the suicidal background and placing his value in Ellie's life leads to. Also in the behind the scenes, they confirm this point when suggesting that Joel's motivation was not just about being able to handle the loss, but that he couldn't bear to lose her because of the parental relationship established. They leaned into that. And it is meaningful, and it was still a very prominent theme within the game, but I think in leaning this far into the parental love theme, they lost their main theme. He didn't just protect Ellie in a lie about what happened, but in what the point of it all is, what the point of surviving is, which to me is a negative change. I also noticed that they removed my favorite line from the game, which is actually in the DLC.
Fight for what? There are a million ways we should have died before today. And a million ways we can die before tomorrow. But we fight for every second we get to spend with each other.
We fight for every second we get with one another. In removing this line and adding in Joel's suggested need to protect Ellie, the show removes this theme and this message entirely. One of my favorite lines from the HBO show adaptation actually continues to support this line of thinking and then focusing on a different main theme. Save who you can save. It's actually a darker version of the theme of we fight for every second we get with one another. Instead of focusing on the beauty of the time that we have with each other, no matter how brief that is, it focuses on the action of protecting at all costs. It's no longer about living with surviving, living with grief. Adapting your meaning and fulfillment in a world that will strip bare every bit of meaning you put into it until it feels like you have nothing left. And in that grief, our task is to get up and find or create more meaning. The Last of Us HBO adaptation removes a powerful message in dealing with existential crisis and replaces it with escapism because modern storytelling values superficial overindulgence. The true strength of telling these characters' stories in an apocalyptic setting is not the rundown buildings or the cool-looking zombies. The strength of this setting is to show characters who have to face existential crisis every single day. They're pushed to more extremes far more often than you or I in a developed society have to. By removing the character development evolution that we experience in the game because of the horrors that these characters face, we are left with a superficial theme that we could get in any non-apocalyptic story. In the TV adaptation of The Last of Us, it's no longer about characters facing life's difficulties. It instead displays them in denial. The Last of Us show makes a crucial mistake compared to the game, and in storytelling as a whole. In the game, Ellie added to Joel's life. In the show, Ellie becomes Joel's life. We can lose anything in life, and it is a dangerous message to suggest that losing what we treasure most means that our life is over. The game canon has a more powerful and actionable message about learning to live with grief, suggesting a reality where Joel could both selfishly save Ellie while also believing we can always find something to fight for. Escapism in media is fun in moderation, but when we take escapism too far, we lose the heart of our stories, and with it, the insights that we could be developing about what's most important. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe. I just started this channel and it would help tremendously. I'll see you in the next one.